Giants fans, we are just 10 days away from the 2026 NFL Draft, and I'm very excited about it, as I'm sure many of us are. So today I wanted to go through some players that are potentially going to be available to the Giants at 37 with that pick, and kind of just wanted to talk through some of them, and I think we'll go through more of them tomorrow too, unless there's any news that we need to discuss. But there are actually so many good options. And when I started playing around with mock drafts, by the time I got to the 37th pick, I was like, oh my God, there's like 5 different players here that I love and that I would be thrilled if the Giants took. So let's go through some of them today. We'll go through some more tomorrow. And then I think we'll obviously continue with draft stuff over the next week and a half until then. Now, we've talked a lot about Texas Tech defensive tackle Lee Hunter. I'm not going to go on my love spiel about him, but I do think that he is a great football player, and I think he would be a great addition to this Giants team next to Dexter Lawrence, if he's still a Giant by the time the draft comes around. And one thing that I wanted to point out with him is that he is the only player on this list that the Giants met with, and they met with him at the Combine. So this is another thing that I was thinking about when I was coming up with this list, because we know that Joe Schoen loves to draft players that he had a top 30 visit on. So we're going to talk about Anthony Hill Jr. tomorrow. He's another linebacker if they don't go Sonny Styles at 5. But he is someone that the Giants have met with twice. So he's on my radar. But I'm like, does that mean that none of these guys outside of Lee Hunter are on their radar? Because there's still plenty of time with the Giants to meet with them. They've done a couple virtual meetings and they've met with players in other situations. So I just don't know. Like, would they draft one of these guys if they didn't have a top 30 visit with him or met him at the Combine, etc.? I don't know. We'll have to see how John Harbaugh goes about things this year. But I still think these are great football players. They are positions of need for the Giants. It will be good value for the Giants to pick them at 37, which is why I want to discuss them. So let's go ahead and start with Lee Hunter. Again, I'm not going to talk a lot about him because I know I've gone on and on about him, but I do think he's a really good football player, and I think he's a great addition to this team. He has great size, strength, and length that is going to help him in the heart of the trenches, which is obviously something that Dexter Lawrence is going to need some help with. He has a broad chest with a 6'9" wingspan. So arm length is a good thing. He does well there. He displays adequate balance and recovery through double teams. I think this is also a quality that we have seen in Dexter Lawrence, who's been double teamed more often than not, especially in the last 2 years. And he's been able to manage it and hold on to them. So especially, I think, for someone like Lee Hunter or whoever the Giants draft at defensive tackle, Dexter Lawrence, again, if he's still on this team come September, is garnering those double coverage, where Lee Hunter or Darius Alexander or anyone else is likely not getting that. So if someone like Lee Hunter is good in double teams, imagine what he's like in a single team when Dexter Lawrence is getting all the double teams. So again, a lot of things to like about him. He's really good at moving with lateral blocks, and he can make a stand on the move. Very important. Good at changing directions, even in small spaces. And one of the things that I saw from him at the Senior Bowl, which is why I was like, who is this guy? He needs to be on my radar, is he absolutely dominated at the bull rusher position. And this is a conversation that I had at the Senior Bowl with Justin Pennick, because I was like, I can't get a full grasp on the defensive lineman versus the offensive lineman, because it looked like almost every time the defensive tackles were just bullying the shit out of the offensive line. And I was like, are the defensive tackles that good? Is the offensive line that bad? Is it somewhere in the middle? And we kind of agreed that it just has to be somewhere in the middle, because a lot of the discourse that I've heard now from the experts in the industry are like, this defensive tackle class is not all that great overall. But then you hear about the 3 potential offensive linemen who could all get drafted in the top 10. So I think, like I said, a happy medium is probably where it's best. But again, he absolutely dominated at the Senior Bowl, and that was one of the reasons why I was like, this guy needs to be on my radar, because he's a monster. Let's move along to wide receiver. Again, I don't really know how the Giants are going to approach this position in the draft. I know there are some people saying I would never rule out Carnell Tate at 5 because Harbaugh likes wide receivers. He's drafted them early, and he's made that a priority. So, just because he loves defense and he probably loves Caleb Downs and he probably loves Sonny Styles and he also loves offensive linemen, don't rule out the wide receiver. I don't know if I agree with that. I think the Giants obviously are going to draft a wide receiver. I just don't think they're going to go after Carnell Tate at 5. And I love Carnell Tate. I would be absolutely beyond thrilled for him to be a Giant. But I just think that's not where their priority is going to lie this year. And I think on their board, like, I don't think they would have him best player available at 5. I just would be surprised by that. So anyway, let's talk about Germie Bernard, who is an Alabama wide receiver, who I know we've talked about briefly on here because he cooked my Gamecock. So unfortunately, I'm very familiar with him. But he's a great wide receiver, should be good value for the Giants at 37. And again, assuming that they're unlikely to go wide receiver at 5, he's going to be a name to watch. Again, the only caveat here is that there is no record publicly of the Giants meeting with him. Now, is it possible that they met during another time and it just never got leaked to the media? Absolutely. I'm kind of just going based on what I have seen from guys like Art Stapleton or Ian Rappaport, or even like Mello has reported on this, Pauline, Jeremy Fowler, Ryan Dunleavy. This is all based on Big Blue View compiled this into an article, which is fantastic, by Ed Valentine. But so they've been updating this and I just don't see any record of it. But again, it doesn't necessarily mean that it didn't happen. So without further ado, Germie Bernard, here's what you need to know. He is great at route running. It's very polished. He's good at manipulating his tempo and is great at selling subtle fakes that will slow down a defensive back and make them a little bit slow to keep up with him. Very important. Reliable hands, especially on third down. Theo Johnson, I'm looking at you, Brosif, because that's not you. He only has 4 drops on 232 career targets. Outstanding catch rate, again. Very, very good wide receiver. Catches and immediately becomes a runner with 0 transition time and real burst in his first 3 steps. He's excellent at tracking the deep ball, especially in flight. Again, something we have seen be an issue throughout this Giants wide receiver core, that tracking the deep ball has not really gone that well, especially if your name is Jalen Hyatt. But something that he is good with and also has some versatility there. He has very good body control and footwork on the sideline. He consistently gets toes down in tight spaces along the boundary. Mario Manningham, ring a bell to anyone? Stuff like that, as we know, as we have seen from this Giants team, those details are so important. And if you can do that at the college level, you can only take it one step further in the NFL without having to get to the NFL and learn how to do that while also trying to be good at everything else. So again, I think there's a lot to like about him. He's very good at contact balance after the catch, great at absorbing hits. He can stay upright. He can fight for extra yardage. Who does that sound like? Cam Skattebo. So contact balance, I remember talking about this literally nonstop last year, talking about some of those later round picks, which is what we all loved about Cam Skattebo, that he was so good at that. To have a wide receiver who can do that, who doesn't get knocked down with the first tackle or first type of touch that they get hit with, very important. So again, he's a guy that I really like. Let's go through some sizing. So he's 6'1", 206 pounds. He was a senior at Alabama. His stats, he had 64 receptions for 862 yards with 7 receiving touchdowns, and his reception average was 13.5 yards per reception. He is ranked number 9 among all wide receivers, according to DraftBuzz, in this wide receiver class, and his player rating is an 84.9. His 40 time was a 4.48. His arm length is 30 3/8 inches, and his hands are 9 7/8 inches. So pretty good athletically, not the fastest wide receiver out there, but a 4.48 is also not horrible. So again, I think a name to watch for the Giants, again, at that 36 spot. The last player that we're going to talk about today is Jacob Rodriguez. If you have heard anything come out of my mouth in regards to linebackers that is not absolutely glazing Sunny Styles, it is talking about Jacob Rodriguez. Now, I know we talked about this briefly, but Jacob Rodriguez and Lee Hunter were both on Texas Tech last year, which was the best college defense in the U.S. So unbelievable defense. So it's not a surprise that they have multiple players coming out that are being talked about who will excel in the NFL. Jacob Rodriguez is one of those players. One of the things that stood out to me about him during the Senior Bowl was how he was able to force turnovers. And the thing that is so interesting about linebackers at the Senior Bowl is that you're not tackling. So it's hard to fully get a grasp of what these linebackers are capable of at the Senior Bowl because they're not doing so much of the extra work that a lot of the other players are doing. They're not like one-on-one battles, like the offensive line versus the defensive line. Like that's not happening. So The fact that he was able to punch the ball out on multiple occasions, he forced fumbles, he recovered fumbles, he forced interceptions. There was so much that he did that I was like, this guy is a stud. And if I'm only seeing this at the Senior Bowl, imagine what the film shows. So very, very excited about him. Of course, Sonny Styles is my guy. I want the Giants to draft him at 5, but if they don't, Jacob Rodriguez is a fantastic option for them at 37. We're also going to go through other options in the 4th round and then in their 6th round picks, because they have 3 6th round picks that are all very close to each other. They're like anywhere from, I think, 6 to 8 spots away. So could have an option there. I'm really just hoping that they can get a 3rd round pick back, because there are so many players, potentially like a Jacob Rodriguez, who could fall, who could slip into round 3, who's, again, if you don't get Sonny Styles, an option there later. And it just kills me that they don't have a 3rd round pick. But come on, Joe Schoen. Prove to us why you deserve to get paid the amount of money that you get paid, okay? And not to piss off Dexter Lawrence, to make good trades and get us some 3rd round picks back. So anyway, so this is actually really interesting, is that when he got to college, he was he played on offense, and he was basically just known as an athlete, and then he ends up leaving college as a stud that like everyone's talking about to get drafted in the 2nd round. Very good at high tackles, so he has a very high tackle number throughout his years in college. Also, again, on ball production. He posted 13 career forced fumbles, including college football leading 7 in 2025. And again, if there's anything that, there's a lot of bizarre things that Joe Schoen says that just lock into my brain, which is really unhelpful, except in situations like this. I specifically remember him saying when he was looking at Tyler Nubin and some of the other players that he ended up drafting, ball hawk, right? And Dane Belton, was that if you can force turnovers in college, that is like one of the number 1 skills, according to Joe Schoen, that and his analytics, that translate into the NFL. Now, we have not seen it from Tyler Nubin. Dane Belton, kind of. We have not seen it much, right? So I don't know how inclined I am to believe Joe Schoen and his analytics and numbers, but he likes to repeat this over and over again. If Jacob Rodriguez could force 7 turnovers in 1 year, which led the entire college football, that better translate to the NFL. He's really caught flat-footed in his lateral pursuit. Again, a good sideline-to-sideline linebacker. He's an excellent tackler. His constant movement makes him hard to hit for linemen. Very impressive. Has great instincts. Again, something else we've heard from Joe Schoen. He always talks about instincts. So whenever I hear certain things, ball hawk, forces turnovers in regards to defensive players, instincts, I'm like, this is like a perfect Joe Schoen type of draft pick. Now, we have to include John Harbaugh in this, so I don't know how much that's going to translate over with Harbaugh in the building, but you know what I mean. And then lastly, he keys quickly and races to the junction point. So again, I just think there's a lot to like about him if the Giants don't pick Sonny Styles. But there's so many more players that we can talk about. So tomorrow we're going to get into more players available at 37. Honestly, could probably do it for days. Maybe we'll talk about some 3rd round picks, and then we'll get into 4th round and later. And then I'll do a mock draft next week. I'm going to do that closer to the draft and then talk final predictions and stuff like that. So it's draft time, baby. It's here. We're so close. We're 10 days away. Cannot wait to see what the Giants will do. So stick around so you don't miss a single thing.